This is Josh here from InsideWrestlingTruth, and today my guest is Matt Douglas. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh. Thanks for having me on today.
Matt, first off, just tell me how you got in the wrestling business.
Well, actually, 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, I moved to Tampa, Florida. So I guess I need to back up a little bit because I went to a pay-per-view in Charlotte, sat ringside with not a young lady, but a lady, and she was Sting's cousin. So I became really good friends with her, and she wanted to do a business venture in Florida. And was on the road too much because she was doing some talent scouting for WCW. So I ended up moving to Florida to kind of be her personal representative for her business venture, which was a wrestling school. And I learned how to train as far as in the ring, but more importantly, I learned how to do business outside of the ring, in the back, bookings, promoting, selling, all of that stuff I learned in St. Petersburg, Florida.
So was you pursuing to be a wrestler?
Well, yes. I mean, it's no secret I wanted to be a professional wrestler from the age of 10 and 11. You know, I lived with my grandmother, and it was always, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that, you're not big enough, you're not this, you're not that. You know, but in my head, I wanted to be a professional wrestler. But luckily, once I was in Florida, it's like, you know what, I don't have what it takes to be a wrestler. And instead of giving up on my dream, I just reevaluated my dream. But I've been blessed with a voice, so announcing was kind of my gig, and we were at a show. I didn't want to announce at first. There was 1,500 people, and the announcer didn't show up. So the promoter says, here you go. And I'm like, and he's like, oh yes. Puts his hand on my back, shoves me through the curtains, and I like to tell people I walked through the curtains and I haven't shut up since. Because I was a shy kid growing up.
Yeah. Was there any announcers you followed after? Or?
Oh, I mean, as far as ring announcers or color commentator announcers?
Just ring announcers.
Ring announcers, no. I mean, it was always Finkel. You know, you had Capetta that was the WCW voice. You know, and you had Bob Cottle that would occasionally do some ring announcing for the NWA and all that stuff. But I really loved the color commentators, the Bobby Heenans, the Monsoons. You know, and I really liked the Tony Schiavone, David Crockett pair. So I never thought I would be a talker in wrestling, but.
Let's talk about some different companies that you participated in the past. The first one we're going to talk about is SCW.
SCW, I guess what has ended up being my baby. My oldest son wants to be in the wrestling business, and at the time his grandmother had asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be a wrestler. And she kind of criticized him a little bit, and I seen myself flashback to that 10, 11-year-old kid when my grandmother's friends would say, what do you want to be? And I would always smile and say, I want to be in the wrestling business. And I was always told, you can't do it. Well, I grew up and I did it. So now, after he was born, I stopped doing wrestling because I didn't want to take the financial obligations of being a promoter anymore. So now, 10 years later, he wants to be in the wrestling business. She's criticizing him. I smile and say, okay, you want in the business, let's go. And that was about the time that the then owner of SCW had called and wanted me to come in and do a commissioner type of role. And I did that. I agreed to do it for the sake of my son. And he was kind of struggling with where they were as a company. And I don't know if he didn't know how to fix it or didn't want to fix it or didn't have the finances to fix it. But I ended up partnering with him. And it was just a disaster. There was not a positive vibe about it. And so I ended up buying him out, and then what I consider the real SCW was born. And that tends to be, if somebody in the business asks about SCW, it's those last group of shows, those last final months that kind of get the recognition of Supreme Championship Wrestling. And it's stuff that I'm proud of. You know, we push the envelope. But more importantly, unlike any of the other independent feds, I think in southern Indiana, northern Kentucky, we had fun. And it wasn't me guiding the ship. I happened to be the captain of the ship, but collectively, the guys in the locker room contributed. They gave their all. And it wasn't for me, it was for we. And we went from, when I bought SCW into a locker room that nobody wanted to work for Supreme Championship Wrestling because of the stigma that went along with that promoter and that organization. And we really turned it around to people were calling, wanting to work, and we had talent pools that we could pull from other feds. I mean, it was the best time of my career, just those SCW days.
D1W.
Destination One. Love the talent roster that's in the locker room. Again, because being in Madison and Destination One was running 40 miles away in Charlestown, we kind of had a vibe that we were going to do some talent exchanges, and we later ended up partnering up to do some stuff. And, you know, I don't know, greed, I don't know what kind of falls into place, but history's history, and good luck to Destination One and the talent pool that they have. APW, man. From Supreme and Destination One, it opened up this door for all pro wrestling, and anybody that is anybody in the state of Kentucky wants to work or has to work for Miss Delphia. Miss Delphia is a living legend. Was the first boxing judge for the state of Kentucky. I mean, this lady is the kindest, sweetest woman in the business that you will ever meet. And when I got the opportunity to go there, I mean, it was just a hand in a glove. I mean, I fell in love with her. She fell in love with me. We did good business up until, you know, when she stopped running her shows. There was some other issues that went on between her and someone else in the company, and she let them go. But, you know, Delphia is Delphia, and to this day, she doesn't run shows anymore, but she says what she wants and she does what she wants, and I'm just blessed to say I've been a part of All Pro Wrestling.
Let's talk about your real friends in the business.
Real friends, man, that's something that you don't have a lot of in wrestling business, but you know, I have to be honest. I think friends are friends when you have something that they can gain. But I like to tell people I do have at least one real friend that I still talk to on a regular basis, which is the great Father Fear. He and I had a lot of fun, especially in the SCW days. We had some good matches, we had some good angles, and it was always Matt Douglas and Father Fear going head to head, face to face. And unless, you know, it was the Halloween show, then it happened to be beard to beard because I happened to dress up as the one and only Father Fear. So, great friend. Of course, I can't say my oldest son because he has developed into, he plays music at all the shows. And whether it's Jerry Lawler, whether it's Jeff Jarrett, Dutch Mantell, I mean, Jake the Snake Roberts, Diamond Dallas Page, I mean, he is the sound guy. And the fact that I'm on the road with him, I mean, you can't ask for a better road partner. And he's never one of those to say, but you owe me. No, he's right there ready to roll when I'm rolling.
Let's talk about how you got the opportunity to work with Jeff Jarrett.
How I got the opportunity to work for Global Force Wrestling and Double J, the King of the Mountain, Jeff Jarrett. You know, during my time with All Pro Wrestling, we used Dutch Mantell a lot. And after All Pro Wrestling, or along with All Pro Wrestling, I was working in Nashville for Burt Prentice, who also used Dutch Mantell. And unfortunately, a drunk driver was on the road and hit his granddaughter and killed her. And Amelia's Law was passed in the state of Tennessee, and it took a lot to get that passed, and we did a series of shows. And having the relationship that I had with Dutch, it was hey Dutch, do you need an announcer? And he's like, abso-fucking-lutely. So I ended up driving. I don't know if you have to edit that out or not.
No, you're fine.
I drove down and we did a series of shows. And so I developed a great relationship for Dutch, not only inside the ring, but outside the ring, because he respected me and he thought that I was good at what I was doing. And we were in Maryville, and it's Maryville, not Maryville, Tennessee, and those people will tell you it's Maryville. So we're down there, and on the road, I got the call from Dutch, and he's like, man, I told Jerry Lawler what you did. And of course, I'd worked with Lawler a handful of times, so he sent some autographs and some pictures, and he said, I didn't think that was enough, so then I called Mick Foley, and I told Foley what you did, and he said, so he sent some pictures and some action figures and signed them and all that. He said, but I still didn't think that was enough. He said, so I called Vince, and Vince sends all these t-shirts for you. He said, and then I still didn't think that was enough, so I called Stone Cold Steve Austin and told Austin what you did. And he goes, so Austin sent you all this stuff. So now here in one conversation, he's named 1, 2, 3, 4 people that he's contacted. He must really think, that I'm good at what I do. And then after that, what he said next kind of floored me. He's like, but most importantly, I talked to Jeff Jarrett. And I told Jeff how good you are and that you need to be with him. And so Dutch was the one that actually opened the door with the communication with Jeff. And it was about 6 months later, I ended up having a face-to-face meeting with Jeff Jarrett, orchestrated by Burt Prentice. And then once I met with Jeff, he's like, Dutch said, I got to have you. And I believe I got to have you. And here we are now, I guess about a year and some months later. And I'm now the executive coordinator for Global Force and for Jeff. I handle Jeff's bookings. I'm his personal rep. I handle business plans, you name it. Everything kind of goes through my hands.
Did you want to talk about the pay-per-view a little bit?
The pay-per-view, January the 4th. It's what we're all dying to see from Tokyo, Japan. Global Force Wrestling presents New Japan's Pro Wrestling. It's Wrestle Kingdom 9. It's an event that has taken place on January the 4th for the last 24 years. We're not really for sure why it got changed to Wrestle Kingdom 9 years ago, but it's here nor there. It's a 24-year-old show on January the 4th, but this is the 9th annual Wrestle Kingdom. Think about your favorite wrestling feud: Austin McMahon, Austin Rock, Piper Hogan, Flair Steamboat, Flair Sting. This is one of those vibes. This is wrestling in the 90s, the Attitude Era on fire with Tanahashi and Okada. Tanahashi's 37, 38 years old. He's doesn't got anything to prove. Okada, the young guy, he's coming in. He wants to take over. It's the Attitude Era all over again. And then when you factor in the likes of Jim Ross, because we signed Jim Ross several weeks ago to do the American broadcast. What wrestling fan does not want to hear Jim Ross in the announcer's booth one more time? Yeah. And if it's one last time, who doesn't want to hear it one final time? And Ross has gone on to say that Tanahashi and Okada will be the main event. It is going to be the biggest main event that he has called in his career. And you think, oh my gosh, think of all the WrestleManias that Ross has voiced, the Royal Rumbles, even go back farther than that. Think about the Clash of Champions that Ross was the voice of. And for him to go on record to say this is quite possibly the biggest main event, that's huge. Huge. And then opening match is the Red Dragons and the Time Splitters versus Red Dragons versus the Time Splitters versus the Forever Hooligans versus the Young Bucks. It's a four corners tag match. This thing is going to set the Tokyo Dome on fire. We're honored. We're glad that we've been approached by New Japan Pro Wrestling to bring this to North America. They do this every year, but this is the first time that it's being broadcast around the world. And knowing what I know and doing the research that I've done for Global Force, I can say there are 2 pay-per-views that are on the books for 2015. WrestleMania, that's a given, and Wrestle Kingdom 9. And why are there only 2 pay-per-views? Because the WWE has pulled all of their pay-per-views to the digital world. It's all on the network. Right. So the only pay-per-views that you can punch into your cable box or your satellite box is Wrestle Kingdom 9 and WrestleMania. And then you take that, okay, we're one of 2. Wrestle Kingdom 9 is New Japan's WrestleMania. It's the biggest event of the year. They're on par to have an attendance of over 50,000 people. They've got the pyro. This is the big show. But then we've also partnered with the Flips, Flipps TV app. And when you add in the Flips TV app, now you have a global market. We've got all the satellite and cable providers in North America, in Canada, and then you throw in the Flips TV app. This pay-per-view can be seen around the globe. And we've talked to some of our global partners in South Africa, and they're having global parties. And fans, this past weekend I was in New Jersey for Pro Wrestling Syndicate, and just talking pay-per-view and talking Global Force and Wrestle Kingdom 9. And I had people telling us that they're all going to their friend's house, and it's at 2 a.m. Eastern here in the U.S., and then we have the primetime viewing, which is the traditional Sunday night viewing at 7 o'clock. But at 2 a.m., they're having this big blowout that they're going to be watching Wrestle Kingdom 9, which is really, really cool. So I'm very blessed, very blessed. And then one of our favorites, AJ Styles and Naito. I mean, it's on the card to be a semi-main event. It's a main event.
Yeah, I'd say. What's the craziest match you've ever witnessed?
Craziest match? Oh my, and I've witnessed a few. Craziest match would probably be New Jack, and hell, I don't even remember who he was wrestling, but if you're an ECW guy, and this goes back to when I was doing my training in Florida, we were in Tampa. They were at the sport arena or whatever, the convention center, and sold out crowd. And I was there with Ned Brady and his girlfriend, and her name escapes me. And New Jack was so busted open. I mean, blood was everywhere, and every time his heart beat, blood just shot out of the top of his head. I mean, it was disgustingly gross, but it was a lot of fun. And then there was also this match with Juicy Jimmy Felcher, which we all know, and Father Fear, and myself and Madman Pondo. And this was the SCW heyday, and I thought Father Fear was supposed to wear the dress for this match, and something happened, Pondo, that I ended up wearing the dress for the match. And I have all these haters that love to talk, and it never fails that every person that wants to talk smack about me wants to throw up that picture in the SCW arena where I had a pink and black dress on. And you know what? I love it. Yeah. I love it. We had so much fun. So much fun.
What do you love and hate the most about the wrestling business?
Well, I love the business as a whole. I mean, when you're on the road as much as I am, and you see the amount of promoters that are blood, sweat, and tears. I was in New Bern, Tennessee, and I told that promoter, I'm like, man, I see so much of myself, in you. He had just purchased a bunch of black sheets, for the entranceway, things that we've all done, little shortcuts, the $3 sheets. And I'm like, man, things that you forget because you're at so many different shows, and whether there's 40 people there or 1,200 people, I just love the business. To sit, like I said, to see the interaction and the fans, and I'm not saying that, last Saturday with Pro Wrestling Syndicate, there's probably 1,200 people, that they were less passionate because they were very passionate about their wrestling that they had paid to see. But then you take the night before, that when it was Next Generation Wrestling, and there may have been 50 people there. Well, guess what? They were just as passionate about the product they were seeing. Two totally different shows, two totally different drawing powers, but the passion that the fans see, I love interacting with them and hearing what they have to say and seeing how they react to the wrestlers and the action. My least favorite thing is the drama. We've been in this long enough. We've known each other for a few years, and it always, any issue that starts in wrestling centers around drama, and it's something that could so easily be avoided. But certain promoters, they want to fuel it, and next thing you know, this one's not talking to this one, and I don't like you anymore, so I'm going to go work for your competitor, and then I'm going to work here until I don't like him, then I'm going to go back to you, and it's just drama.
Speaking of drama, do you want to talk about the Jeff Jarrett and Ian Rotten situation at the IWA?
No.
Okay.
Jeff was promised X amount of dollars to make an appearance for Ian. We make the appearance for Ian. Ian used the excuse of PayPal and didn't pay him. And to this day,
Right.
you know, other than that, that's kind of all I can.
Okay. Who do you think are some of the most underrated guys in the Indies?
Underrated guys, by far one of my personal favorites, and these guys know it because I tell them all the time. Team IOU, Nick Iggy and Kerry Awful. Those two deserve television somewhere soon. I mean, I love those guys. They're entertaining. They are marketing geniuses. I mean, Iggy does a comic. I mean, they always have new T-shirts. They always have a following. By far, they don't get the credit that they deserve. I mean, and I love those guys.
Who was the biggest influence for you to get into wrestling?
Whew. Well, as a kid, I loved Ric Flair. The one person I have not met in all of my travels has been Ric Flair, and I was this close. Actually, to back up, when I worked for Burt Prentice in the 90s, I was probably 75 feet away from Flair, and he looked right at me, but I just couldn't be like, hello, I want to talk to you, hello, can you sign anything? I just didn't say anything. But even recent shows, I mean, I was so close to meeting Ric Flair, and then whatever happens, contracts get signed, and he goes this way, and it's like, but one day I will meet Ric Flair.
All right, I'm gonna name some names off to you.
Okay.
And you just kind of tell me your feelings on that guy. You know, like,
All right.
you know.
I'm anxious to see where this is going.
The first one is Juicy Jimmy Felcher.
Juicy Jimmy Felcher. I love Jimmy. We've had a lot of good times, especially some Fearville moments and Juicy, and let's just say some painting that went on outside the house one night with Jimmy and someone else. But yeah, Jimmy's great. I love working with Jimmy. I would love to have that moment again that this particular show brought all of us back together, at least for one night, one last show together, because we had a lot of fun.
Madman Pondo.
Pondo. Well, and actually that goes back to a Juicy Jimmy thing. I mean, Pondo and Jimmy were knee-deep in this angle, and being the owner of Supreme, they kind of put me in a position that if Pondo lost, I had to wear a dress, but if Jimmy lost, Father Fear had to wear a dress, and, you know, we've already talked about it once.
Yeah. I
had to wear the dress, you know, but I think it goes Pondo's comfort level with me as a friend and as a promoter. He knew I was fine to roll with whatever, and we rolled, and man, did we have a good time.
How about Isaiah?
Isaiah, talk about underrated. You know,
Definitely.
Isaiah is a high flyer. He's an honest guy, and if anybody says they have any type of heat with Isaiah, then you need to look in the mirror as far as the reason why. Because I'm telling you, I like Isaiah. I was able to work out a deal that brought Isaiah and Simon Says to Nashville for a promoter down there, you know, and they stole the show. You know, I love I.
Sebastian Eros.
Sebastian Eros, my counterpart on the creative side of Supreme Championship Wrestling. Sebastian, we pushed the envelope with Sebastian, but pound for pound, he's probably one of the best wrestlers that I know. But he has a mind like no other. And you know, there were times that we would do some creative stuff, and I knew where I wanted to get, but how do I get there? And Sebastian was like, where you at? And we'd sit down and we'd spend the next 2 hours coming up with something that was just off the charts. You know, great guy.
Billy the P.
The P. I missed the P. There was an incident with Burt Prentice where Billy kind of didn't do what he was supposed to do and kind of physically got assaulted by someone, I missed the P. You know, I used to not take a booking unless they booked the P, but for whatever reason, we just drifted away. So, good guy.
Cash flow.
No comment.
Derek Neal.
Derek Neal, the real deal. My gosh, let me tell you. Another underrated guy. I think he's right up there with Iggy and Awful. I think opportunity is just a phone call away with Derek Neal. I think the last time that I worked with Derek Neal was Saul in Millersville, and the P and RJ and myself, we were the Douglas dynasty. You know, you had Matt Douglas, RJ Douglas, you know, and we factored in Billy the P, that we were all just brothers, and we had a huge little run down there, and it was, again, I mean, that whole time span of wrestling for us, whether it's Madison, whether it was Charlestown, whether it was Shepherdsville, whether it was Nashville, whether it was Millersville, we rolled and we had fun.
What do you think is the biggest problem with the business today?
I think a lot of times everybody talks about marks. And, oh, you're a mark in the business, you're a mark, you're a mark, you're a mark. Well, the fact is, we're all marks. If we're not marks, then what the hell are we doing in the business? We all have to love it. We all have to be passionate about it. We have to be a fan of what it is we are doing. And it just kills me when promoters or wrestlers feel they're above that. And I'm not saying like in your face kind of mark. It's, I love what I'm doing. I'm passionate about what I'm doing. I'm a mark for the business, and they forget what it's like to be that wrestling fan. And I've worked for a lot of promoters, and it always, even sitting in a creative meeting now with somebody, you know, it's, you forget what it's like to be that fan. And in your head, it makes sense, but in my head, sitting out there after I just paid $10 to watch your show, I'm like, what? You know, I think people kind of got to back up a little bit and say, you know what, we're all marks. But I love being a mark, because as long as I'm a mark, then I know what I'm passionate about and what I like and what we need to do to entertain the people that paid money to see us.
What's your favorite pro wrestling moment as a fan?
Favorite pro wrestling moment? Man. Well, I think, like everybody, the slam from Hogan onto Andre will stand out. I think Starrcade 85 stands out in my head. I think the Hogan jumping to the NWO, that Bash at the Beach moment, that stands out. Another one is Rick Rude appearing on Raw that was taped, and Nitro that was live. Almost to the second of the segment was classic. You know, I love wrestling. One of my favorite ones, and this is kind of a sidebar, we were in Nashville a couple years ago, and, you know, I have a relationship with Dutch, and I hadn't talked to Dutch for a couple of weeks, and I'm sitting there, and Swagger's music hits, and I look again, and I'm like really trying to focus my eyes, and I'm like, holy shit, I know that limp. And the fact that Dutch Mantel was walking out now, Zeb Coulter, you know, in WWE was just a memorable moment for me.
Yeah.
So,
how about your favorite road story?
Favorite road story, man. Once upon a time, Cash Flow, RJ, the P, and I were on the road more often than not. So when we were going to Millersville, we would always stop at White House, and there's a little gas station that had a gorilla. So we would always, I mean, the gorilla was always molesting P in some form or another, you know, where we were always getting some stupid picture in front of the gorilla. Another time, Billy the P and Cash Flow, and I don't remember who else. Chandler was on the road, but there was another worker that was on the road. And I had driven Chillicothe, Ohio, was 5, 6 hours, 7 hours from Louisville, and I did all the driving up and I did all the driving back. Robert, the security guy, and let me back up. We go into McDonald's, and Robert has to go to the bathroom, and they were out of toilet paper, so he's literally screaming at us. We all stopped to get a drink. Robert's like, Pat, Cash, trying to get our attention. Ends up calling Cash, and I'm like, he's out of toilet paper, isn't he? Cash is like, yeah. I'm like, watch this. So I take it. I'm like, Robert, no big deal. Here's some paper, man. And I hand him a straw wrap. But same trip, only instead of going, we were coming. And we're somewhere. I mean, we were talking aliens. Billy the P introduced us what the term of a hot Carl was. And we were talking Cosby sweaters and all kinds of Bill Cosby stuff. I mean, that stands out as one of the best road trips. Woo, mercy daddy, I can hear the P now.
Let's talk about the difference between, let's say, wrestling in Tennessee and wrestling in Indiana.
I would say Indiana is there's a lot of drama here. And it's not that there's not drama there. It's just of a different nature, I guess. But there, I like to say it's not really wrestling. There it's still wrestling. You know, it's those Memphis die-hard fans that still come out and still in your face believe that you know, you're going to kill somebody, you know, because of the match that you're putting on. And not that I wouldn't work here, I'm at home, you know, in Tennessee. So,
what about some of your favorite moments in your career?
Favorite moments, definitely the Never a Dull moments that Billy the P and I filmed. It was a little segment that he and I would just basically set up the camera. There was no script. Excuse me. We would just kind of know what we wanted to say. And once one of us would say it, then it evolved into this, into this, into this, into this. And we were in Burns, Tennessee, and there was this girl that was a karaoke singer. And she was in love with Benny Bray. And, you know, they've been together for years now. But it's funny to see where they are now, to think where it was back then. And P and I had been building up that she was going to perform this song. And she performs it, and it was, instead of a love song, it was kind of an angry hate song. And then Benny Bray shows up, and you know, we were getting ready to do a legend show at All Pro Wrestling with Jerry Lawler, and this was before Lawler had the heart attack. And so Billy the P kept promising our viewers that the King was going to be there. So Lawler's music hits, and out comes Billy the P wearing Lawler's crown. You know, so he had this goofy crown on, and Benny Bray walks up, and like he knights Benny Bray, and then we're talking, and then the next thing you know, Benny's on his knees again, and he's knighting him again, and then we're still talking, and then out of the blue, Benny gets on his knees, and Billy knights him again, and it was just like, what the heck's going on? But, you know, it's one of my favorite moments, just kind of thinking back, because it was genuine. You know, it was unscripted, unedited. We just went out there and we were ourselves, and we had fun. And whether it was Heather Wilson, whether it was Benny Bray, whether it was Burt Prentice, or who it was, it all kind of flowed. So that's up there with one of my memories.
Now, me personally, I'm pretty much bored to death with the WWE right now.
Yes.
So what's your thoughts on WWE and the future of TNA?
WWE, well, I watch it to see my old friend Zeb Coulter. I don't really watch a whole lot of programming because, you know, being the executive coordinator for Global Force, I'm always doing something. I'm always doing a presentation. I'm always preparing a budget. I'm always in the middle of something. So I don't have a whole lot of time to watch the current product. Other than I always tune in to see my buddy. Right. TNA, you know, they just signed with Destination America. I hope this switch turns it around for them. Best of luck.
Who are some of your favorite legends that you've worked with?
Oh, man. Well, I have to start out by saying, you know, this past weekend, we were at Pro Wrestling Syndicate in Rahway, New Jersey, and it was a total mark-out moment. I mean, when Tully Blanchard walked in.
Right.
I mean, it was just like, holy cow, he's here, and, like I said, I don't shut up a lot. So once I had an opportunity that I could just go up and talk to him, and I had him sign a picture for my son, it was cool. And I've been in locker rooms with everybody, and actually, in this particular setting, I was there with Jeff and Karen Jarrett. I had Tully Blanchard to my left. I had Jake the Snake Roberts to my right. To the left of Tully was Kevin Nash. To the left of him was Doc Gallows. To the left of him was RVD. And to the left of him was Zach Gowen. So I'm sitting here with all these big names and all these major people, and yet I'm just thrilled to death, man. I got my picture taken with Tully Blanchard. I was honored for Slam Fest in 2013. That I got to bring out Diamond Dallas Page. I mean, that was huge for me. Not that I'm a Page fan, but it was the fact that I was bringing out Diamond Dallas Page, somebody that I've always watched on television, and then I'm standing in the ring as he brings out Jake Roberts, and I'm just kind of looking around like, holy cow, or if I'm at the Jarrett's and we're talking Global Force, then it's what have I done? Why am I sitting here talking about all of these legends, at Jeff Jarrett's house in his office, and it's just, it's surreal.
Yeah. What's been the biggest regret in your career?
Biggest regret? I don't really regret a whole lot. I mean, there's always, I love the fact that I purchased SCW. But from a business standpoint, I think because the previous owner had tarnished that name, as far as with workers. I'm not saying with the fans, I'm saying with workers. Because SCW had a hard time getting new workers to come in. It was the same group. You were either in this clique or this clique. And if you were in this clique, you were mad because this clique got all the belts and this clique got all the pushes. And it wasn't good. Hindsight being 2020, I probably should have changed the name of Supreme. But I didn't. I think if we had changed the name, we may have done better business. Not that we did bad business with Supreme. I mean, my gosh, we started filming Ignitions that took on a life of its own. 14 countries, regular views. I mean, it was fun. But I think if I had it to do over again, I would probably have changed the name. Even though I own the name Supreme Championship Wrestling, I still think I would have changed it to something else. And maybe made a Supreme Championship or something like that to kind of give some homage to the heritage and the history that Supreme had. But I don't know. If I had one regret, maybe I would have played with that. And I'm not saying that I made a mistake then. Hindsight's always 20/20. Maybe things would have been a little different if I changed it. Not that it was bad, but maybe it would have been the same. So.
You want to talk about Slam Fest 2015?
I've got a message to give the promoter a call. I seen a post on Facebook, Slam Fest 2015, details are coming, so I only have to assume that my give me a call message, which I have to do because, I mean, honestly, I am so busy. I normally make my phone calls when I'm on the road because that's when I have the free time. So I'm only assuming that my phone call to call, or my message to call, is to officially book me as the voice of Slam Fest. Slam Fest is near and dear to my heart. Mark puts on a hellacious show. I mean, you come up to me that show and I'm like, holy cow, Father Fear's son's here. So the fact that he's going to do it again. I mean, Slam Fest, and then I forget what the other one was called after that. I mean,
Summer Heat.
Summer Heat. Yeah, that's right. Astronomical crowds, great names, great night of wrestling, lots of fun. I don't know where the venue is going to be. I don't know anything other than I got a message to call him, and I seen the post on Facebook. So stay tuned. Yeah. But my main focus is January the 4th. Right. That's the tunnel vision that I have. Tokyo Dome New Japan Pro Wrestling, Global Force Wrestling, live on pay-per-view.
In closing, Matt, do you have anything else you'd like to say? Or?
I'm honored that you've asked me to be here. Like I said, tune in, cable, satellite, the app, everything's right there. You can watch it. I'm anxious to hear Jim Ross and Matt Stryker. I'm glad that I'm where I am and have the opportunities that I've been given, and I can't wait for 2015 with the announcements for Global Force Wrestling.
Thanks again, man.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
man. Thank you.